All right, everybody. Happy Monday, July 21st. Hopefully, you guys all had a great weekend. Let's talk about some weather headlines this week. And as you could probably imagine, it's going to be hot, pretty typical of July. It will be a touch above where we have been, at least recently. Many are under a heat advisory, but increasing rain chances will help to dull those numbers, especially late in the week beyond Wednesday. So let's get right into it here. We look at the heat advisory from a region-wide perspective, and there's a lot of them. They go all the way up, into South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and then a big chunk of the Southeast. And this simply means that with the impact of our dew points, of the heat levels, dew points combination, your heat index can get upwards of 105 in some instances. Speaking of, look at the current heat index. Some of this is sensor, some of this is actual pixel query. So Birmingham is at 100, Starkville at 102, Huntsville at 104, Montgomery 103, and you can see all the way back into Texas. Just a hot afternoon here, but again, July, specifically this point in July, is typically the hottest for much of the lower 48. Actual temperatures there, 94 is showing up at Birmingham, Montgomery, Starkville, Dothan, showing at 97. And again, it is a hot afternoon, but again, it's kind of what you expect. If you're new to Alabama, I will say this. It can be a rude awakening. I got family that's moved down here from Michigan, and they're like, y'all summer heat is just rude. And it is. Talk to folks who work outside for a living, and they say, this is not pleasant, but we kind of know what we're getting into here doing outdoor work this time of year. So mid-90s across much of the state. This is the reason for those heat index values getting to where they're at, is the dew point. When you talk about your dew point, humidity is relative. So your highest humidity values are going to actually be in the morning. We could be 95 to 100% humidity in the morning. Well, that's because cooler temperatures like we have in the morning hold less water. So relatively speaking, we're closer to full saturation. In the middle of the afternoon, you want to look at this, your dew point levels. They get above 70, and that's where it starts to feel pretty oppressive. And indeed it does, with a lot of places here in central Alabama feeling like we're at or over 100 degrees. In fact, that's the case all across the state. Is there any rain to cool things down? Not really, unless you're over in Georgia. That's where we're seeing the majority of our convective activity, at least to this point. All of this is moving off in a general southeasterly motion. We are right underneath an upper level high, and that is why you're seeing the lack of convection across Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama at this point in time. So we'll take a look more at the local level. This is from the Birmingham sensor. You can see over in Calhoun County, a couple thunderstorms there up near Weiss Lake. That's about it. Everything else is over in Georgia. We'll look down across the Wiregrass in another area that can typically see daily thunderstorms in the summertime thanks to the Gulf. Even there is relatively quiet. So again, from a precipitation standpoint, that's not really the story here on this Monday. It will remain the heat. So for how long? Let's take a look at the upper level map here. This is beginning Tuesday evening. The high that's over us right now, you're seeing depicted over Arkansas and Missouri tomorrow. We'll see another high ridge building just off the Florida Peninsula here as we head towards the middle of the week. But you'll see this upper level ridge broaden out, stretching really from Houston all the way up to Cincinnati. And as that broadens out, that's going to make way for perhaps more in the way of rain chances. Notice the high pressure that's now to the east of the Florida Peninsula. What does that do to our winds? Well, it puts our winds more out of the south, especially over Georgia, over the southern half of the state of Alabama. And this is going to be when our rain chances start to increase. So we'll keep watching this. But if you're west of an upper high, you'll have more of a southerly flow, and that's going to bring back more moisture and perhaps better rain chances as we move onward in the week. There it is on Saturday. Again, you kind of have this very broad ridging that goes all the way into the central plains with that high focus just off of the Georgia coastline, the barrier islands. Let's go Futurecast. Let's start Tuesday morning. And again, a lot of the state's going to be dry. I do think we'll see a little bit better coverage on Tuesday afternoon, but through 2 o'clock, not a whole lot to talk about. By 2, we're seeing a couple thunderstorms up near 278, a few down in the extreme southeastern corner of Alabama. And again, very hit and miss thunderstorms, not great coverage, but we are looking at, again, peak heating of the day, probably anytime from 1 to about 10, 11 o'clock, but more specifically, probably 3 to about 9 p.m. And then those thunderstorms gradually wind down as we hit the overnight hours. Looking at the NDFD, this is just a kind of all-encompassing look at rain chances from a regional perspective and coverage level. You have the highest on Tuesday in East Alabama, at least from a statewide perspective. You go into Georgia, and highest will be again along and east of I-75. Notice on Wednesday, though, that number jumps, or those coverage levels jump as far north as I-20, but you get down to the southern half of the state and the Wiregrass, all the way over to Mobile, seeing the much higher rain coverage in that 60, 70, perhaps 80% coverage. Thursday, same deal. The focal point will be in southern Alabama, again, because that upper level pattern is going to feature that return moisture. But again, we get a lot of rain down in southern Alabama. That tends to deter our coverage here in the northern half of the state. So take a look at the high temperatures Tuesday. Again, we're headed to the mid-90s. We should be able to get there easily before any convection takes place. Wednesday, same deal, mid-90s, although we'll start to see heat levels come down from here on out. This is a look at high temperatures on Thursday. They're very close to seasonal, except in the southern half of the state where we'll have more of that rain coverage, but upper 80s to low 90s, and that'll be the case on Friday as well. I think most places will probably be at about 90 degrees, maybe even a bit cooler than that, with more cloud cover, better rain chances. Same deal on Saturday. We got upper 80s to lower 90s across much of Alabama. And on into Sunday, we'll keep on going here. Heat levels continue to come down as those rain chances are more sporadic, more widespread. And again, we won't have that high, strong ridge over us, which typically means our heat levels do come down some. So our CPC outlook through early August, going to show, again, most of the lower 48 above average. And for us here in Alabama, slightly above average, leaning here. This would be suggesting maybe temperatures instead of around 90 to 92, maybe 92 to about 95 degrees. Again, tough to tell. It's 8 to 14 days. This is looking at patterns, though, and that could make sense. All right, tropical update here, big picture. Not a whole lot happening. You can see your ITCZ. You can see a good cluster of thunderstorms coming off the African coast in this one teeny tiny cluster of storms. It's trying its best, but NHC gives us about a 10% chance of development in the next 48 hours, as well as 7 days. We'll go ahead and give it the spaghetti plots starting today, and you'll notice the timestamp up in the corner. By Wednesday, this is crossing over the Windward, Leeward Islands. And again, if this forms, this will take a very typical due westerly approach and head towards the Honduras area, other parts of Latin America by the weekend. Again, we'll watch it. Development not overwhelmingly expected. And keep in mind our tropical activity this time of year is fairly limited. We are right about here in terms of the season, so we have a long ways to go before reaching the peak. But as always, we will keep a close eye on it here for you moving forward. So that's your Monday forecast update. Again, hot early week. It's July to be expected. Heat advisories middle of the day. Take it easy if you can outside. Better rain chances later in the week will help bring down those heat levels. Hope you guys have a great Monday. Great start to the week. See you tomorrow.